Well, of course, the cost of fuel will drive consumption down, and that will lead a reduction in the amount of tax revenue that's collected from fuel sales. So, in essence, I think we're going to have a period of frugality that's going to affect state government in the budgeting process.
Well, that's a two-edged sword, clearly, because as crass as it may sound, the high price of oil and natural gas do send a lot of tax dollars into our state budget, money that we're able to use for roads and bridges and for education and that sort of thing. So that part of it's good. There's also this very serious downside that people see with the high price of gasoline, and where it really tends to be hurting is our agencies and our schools that have to spend extra money on the high price of fuel. It's clearly the downside. So one thing that we do in state government all the time, it's not very interesting, but we deal with money, and we divide the money up, and we prioritize money based on our values. And so we're going to have to continue to prioritize and make sure that we take care of the most important things in state government, and that's our public schools.
Oklahoma is a relatively poor state compared to most states in the United States. It's also a low tax state. So we're challenged with using the funds we have available very prudently. As far as affecting the rest of the United States with our spending policies, I don't think we probably contribute that much, but our state is not allowed to go into debt, and we also have a very volatile economy because we're hitched to the oil and gas business very closely. So we have to be very careful that we don't make obligations for the future, so that the downturn in the economy would damage our ability to fund the programs we have.
I think we have. When I took office, right after Brad was elected governor, then we had a $700 million shortfall that year in the state budget in Oklahoma. Where are we at today? 6 years later, we have no budget shortfall. We have a rainy day fund that is completely full and overflowing, and we have not raised taxes. We did not raise taxes, or we didn't even attempt to have the people raise taxes back when things were tough. We've cut taxes, actually. Now, maybe we cut a little bit too deep. I don't know. We'll find that out here in the next few years. But as stressful as it is for me to watch the national news and see what's been going on in Congress, please be assured that in state government we have been very careful to balance the budget every year and to put money back for a rainy day.
The problem we have in Oklahoma probably relates to continuing to fund both our public schools and our higher education. And it is going to take a bipartisan effort. As a matter of fact, the Republicans at this point control the House, and the Senate is split between the Republican and Democratic Party at this point. So I don't see any way that you can have a Republican plan and a Democratic plan for funding state higher education, public education. So I think there's going to have to be a commitment to that sort of goal.
I've just gotten through doing that for the last couple of years. In the state Senate, we have been tied 24-24. I was the Democratic floor leader, which basically meant my Republican counterpart and I decided what bills came to the floor when they were scheduled, when they got votes, what bills would be sent to what committee. We just got through with the greatest exercise in bipartisanship in the history of the state of Oklahoma. We were tied 24-24. Nothing got done without bipartisan support. I think our governor has been very, very strong on that issue. He's been preaching bipartisanship from the word go, and clearly if you have a Democratic governor, a Republican House, and an equally divided Senate, then that's the world that we live in. It could be nothing more equal. I've been there. I've done it for the last 2 years, and I know that I can do it again. I guess almost by definition, it won't stop them asking. Agency heads will ask for supplemental appropriations. What we have tried to stop, for example, with the Department of Corrections, is knowingly underfunding them when we make the budget for the next fiscal year, knowing that they will have to come back for supplemental appropriation. We should not ever do that. If I was in this last time, this last budget cycle, we did try to fund the EOC adequately based on what they asked. But we're doing this a year in advance based on revenues that are coming in the year in advance. Will we do it perfectly? No. And so there have to be some supplemental budget appropriation requests. They have to be there. And we need to listen and make sure that we do fund the real necessary supplementals that are asked.
Well, our state budget is $7.1 billion, and it would be difficult to anticipate the actual expenditures necessary 11 months after a budget is made. So there's going to have to be some exchanges and priorities within the budget situation. I've budgeted for 23 years myself. I've budgeted a $25 million operation. And I realized that whenever you make those budgets out, that you're going to have situations where you're going to have to take money from one budget and put it in another. Now, one thing that I did do as a budget practice was exercise zero-based budgeting. In other words, if you didn't get anything unless it was specified and what it cost when it went in. So that's one way of controlling the budgeting process on any level. I think the key part of that question is regional average, and I'll get right to that. Regional average is a moving target. I've been a university administrator in Texas, and I've run a teacher education program in Texas. And the demands for teacher education in Texas are different than the demands for teacher education in Oklahoma. The demands in Kansas are different. You have different requirements for state curriculum, state mandated curriculum. You have different ethnic groups with different needs. You have cities that are larger in some areas, and in some areas you have more rural populations. So I don't really think you can compare a regional average between Oklahoma and surrounding states. It's a moving target. I think it is deceptive, and I think we need to get away from that and then determine what we can do to help our teachers here.
Yes, I do support that concept. I have voted for it. Every time it's come up, it's a program that it's an idea that Governor Henry has had. And even though the regional average is something in anything, teacher salaries or anything else that is a moving target, that doesn't mean that we can't strive to get there, because we lose so many teachers that we train in Oklahoma. We educate them here and train them here, and then they go to other states so they can make more money. So it's a very admirable thing that Governor Henry has led on the last few years. I do support it. I'm one person that believes that we will never go broke investing in education.